I launched the expert we've been building in our previous videos, the one we created specifically for making educational videos. Incredibly, I ran a 10-year test and the expert doubled the account with the settings we had put in almost randomly at the beginning when we started building our expert. And precisely because of this, something dangerously interesting happened. Come on, let's really see what this expert does. You see, test YouTube. As we called it from the start, I set a long period of 10 years. The data is the same we've always used for our tests, so it's what you see here. We had never done a long back test because clearly it wasn't even planned to do so. This was just an experiment to see how the code would be written. Let's see what this expert does. So, the test is finished. As you can see, it started off, it kept earning quite well for a few years. Then it went through a losing phase, recovered a bit, dropped again, and now it's back to the levels of a few years ago when it was at its peak. Well, clearly this isn't a great looking equity curve, but we also just put in some numbers based on our gut feeling, so maybe it's a good starting point for doing some optimization. Let me know in the comments if you want to see a video where I explain it to you, how to go about optimizing an expert like this. And maybe we'll find some good parameters to use on this one as well. Welcome everyone, I'm Andrea, your automated trader. And if you like what I do, don't forget to leave a like on the videos and subscribe to the channel. All right, now let's focus on programming. In this video, we're going to add a trailing stop to our expert. The trailing stop we're going to add isn't a trailing stop based on pips or points, it's a trailing stop based on percentage. Why are we using a percentage-based trailing stop? Why a percentage-based stop? Because in my opinion, it's much more robust than the usual trailing stop, a stop set with just a few pips. For example, if we consider gold, let's say we run a long back test. So at the start of our back test, maybe gold was worth $1,500 and today it's worth $5,000. What does this mean? It means that if we set a trailing stop, let's say of 2,000 points, at the beginning, 2,000 points is a certain value when gold is worth $1,500. So it's a trailing stop of a certain size. Today, since the value is almost 4 times higher, our trailing stop is as if it has been reduced by 4 times. So this can distort the results of our tests. It can be something that it can have an abnormal impact because it's as if you're using a trailing stop that keeps getting smaller over time. By working with percentages, you don't have this problem because if I say I activate the trailing stop after the position is up by 0.5%, I don't care about the price anymore because it's always 0.5%. Let's take a look at the code to see how to add something like this to our expert. So I've already added the 2 blocks of code we need to do this. The first obviously is the inputs. So I've added this input block here. What do we provide as input? Obviously, the first thing we provide is a Boolean variable to determine whether we want to use this trailing or not. Stop. So if it's true, we use it. If it's false, we don't use it. Maybe we use it on one expert and not on another. I always prefer to start it this way. This way you have the option, even when running tests, to see whether it's appropriate to use the trailing stop or not. You can maybe set it to true or false, and it will run both the combinations with the trailing stop and those without. The second parameter we provide is the distance of the trailing stop from the price. So the distance at which we keep our stop loss from the price. In this case, I set it to 2%. So our stop loss moves forward together with the price at a distance of 2%. And the last one is the trigger at which we start using the trailing stop. So the distance when the position goes into profit at which we activate our trailing stop. In this case, I set it to 0.3%. So when I have a gain of 0.3%, my trailing stop is activated and the stop moves at 0.2 from the price. Now let's take a look at the actual block of code that does all the work. This is the block you see here. So I put it in the onTick function, of course, because I can't have it run every minute here. The trailing stop needs to be precise, so it has to work on every tick, because as soon as there's a tick that moves the price, I need to update the stop. Obviously, this is something to keep in mind when you're optimizing because it could give you completely different results. If you use the model based on T-ticks or the HLC1 model, just a few ticks are enough to throw everything off, especially if you have a very tight trailing stop. Maybe if you're using a trailing stop of 0.05%. It's clear that in that case, you're entering a field where things are very small and you absolutely have to use real ticks and have good quality historical data. Because otherwise, the data you get from the backtest won't be reliable. So let's take a look right away. There's the IFTs. This is what I mentioned earlier. If TS is true, then I execute the trailing stop. If it's false, I don't enter the IF, and I don't do anything. Then I take the B of the ask, so the price values. After that, I have a for loop inside the positions. I go through the positions I have on MetaTrader, and here I select them. With this IF, I select the one with the index I from the for loop, so I select them one by one. And then I need to make sure that the symbol of the position is the symbol I set. The expert, of course, and the magic number of the position must be equal to my expert's magic number, so that I only select the positions opened by my expert. 1, 2, 5, however many there are, but only those from my expert. Then I need to distinguish whether I'm in a buy case or a sell case. To do this, I use an if statement. I read the type of position and check if it's a buy, for example. Then I have an if statement that tells me when the trailing stop is activated, so the price must be greater than the opening price of the position plus the opening price of the position multiplied by the trigger percentage. Basically, this means I need to be beyond that profit distance we set as input at the beginning. If this is true, I recalculate the stop loss as the price minus the price times the trailing stop percentage. Because in the case of a buy, I need my stop loss, which is 0.2 as we said, to be 100 below the price. And I do this with this recalculation of the stop. I do one last if statement to check if I need to modify the stop loss when I go to change it. When my stop loss is greater than the stop loss of the position, or is that fine? In this case, the stop loss is equal to 0. So why is this part of the stop loss equal to 0? Because if I started by opening a position without a stop loss, I can still activate my trailing stop. If this is true, with this line of code, you modify the stop. As before, I also included the take profit in case you want to modify the take profit as well. Here you add a line and set your new take profit. The same thing happens for sell. It's obviously the opposite, so the logic remains the same. Only the formulas change because the sell has to work the opposite way from the buy. So you've seen how to create a trailing stop in code. Now let's test if we've done everything correctly. So let's compile. Let's go to MetaTrader and see what happens. So let's test if our trailing stop works. Let's set a large target so we can see if it gets triggered, let's say 2%. That way our trailing stop should activate. Let's see if our trailing stop works. Stop. Now let's take a closer look at a trade that actually worked out quite well. This particular one was an incredibly small one. Here you can see that we made a trade and our target was closed with the trailing stop. So even if we look, for example, in the history, we see that all the trades have different values. So we're not closing with the target, but we're closing with the trailing stop. This one, for example, made 900 euros, this one 115, and this one 300. So they're all like this. 1,200, well, what about the stops? Obviously, they're all the same because we don't change the stop, but you can see that the targets are all different. This means that we always close at a stop level, a different loss, which is what moves our trailing stop. Let's see what happens now with our backtest. Just out of curiosity, maybe it will go terribly. As you can see, more or less, the trend is similar to what we had before. The last part of our chart changes a bit. Because our trailing stop isn't a tight trailing stop, in this case, it's quite a wide trailing stop, so it slightly changes the equity, but doesn't completely overturn it. So, to recap what we've done in this video, we added a trailing stop that's based on a percentage. We have a percentage input that tells us how far from the price we want to keep the stop. We have a percentage that tells us when to activate the trailing stop, so at what percentage of profit on the position we activated. And this can be a trailing stop you can use on any market because it works based on percentage. Then we check in the code whether the position is buy or sell to decide how to move our stop loss. Now let me know in the comments if you want to add other functions to this expert, or if you want to see a video on how we optimize the expert. And maybe we'll get some good or fairly good parameters to use for testing. Maybe in demo mode with the expert we've created. If you want to see it, write in the comments. I want the optimization. See you in the next video.